Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Ferragamo's Forecast. I'm Michael Ferragamo. As you can see here today, we'll be covering one of the greatest weather events to ever strike New England, one that left us absolutely paralyzed in a standstill for days on end. I'm talking about the only great blizzard of 1978. Now, we'll get to that in a second, but first, as always, let's have a look at our south camera towards Boston. As you can see, gloomy skies, that reflects what is coming through right now, a low pressure system, and that will soon bring us some gusty winds. Nantucket and parts of the South Shore could reach gusts over 70 miles an hour, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Now, looking at the data outside, as you can see, low 40s, 41 degrees. Wind off the water, east-northeast, but that will change as the low pressure system tracks away from us, and those temperatures will fall as a result from that. So winds will be coming out of the northwest very shortly, and that will bring our temperatures down into the upper 20s for later tonight. Now, you notice the humidity, 95%, and that's because of that rain, that drizzle that we've been having throughout the day, and that drizzle has added up to only 0.3 of an inch, but we will get more rain later today. Now, the 7-day forecast, it pretty much shows what we've been dealing with this past winter. It's just an average week. So temps on Friday, right now, they'll start in the mid-50s. Saturday, once the cold front comes through, we'll be down back into the 30s, mainly sunny, so no rain whatsoever. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we're watching a rainstorm. It really depends on how close the storm tracks to us. If it tracks farther away, then we'll have cloudy skies and temperatures, as you see here, in the 30s and upper 40s. And then next week, too, we're also watching another system which could bring us some rain. So we'll just keep the chances of rain pretty low then, and we'll refine those details when the date nears. So the blizzard of 78. Just a truly incredible storm here. As you can see, this is a satellite image on the morning of the blizzard of 78. And I know some of you, if not most of you, were not around for this blizzard. But if you have family that perhaps were in this area during it, I'm sure they'll have stories, and it's something they'll never, ever forget. Just a monster from a meteorological standpoint. So before we really dive into this storm, let's go over some statistics real quick, just to let you get a feel of what kind of a monster we're really talking about here. So the blizzard of 78 produced some of the worst coastal flooding in New England history. We're talking like the typical nor'easter usually amplifies 1 or 2 high tide cycles that cause some coastal flooding, sometimes major, when a nor'easter comes by, but not with this storm. It's 4 high tide cycles that this one impacts. 4 high tide cycles, each one making it farther inland and adding on another 200 million to the damage total. So that's incredible to think about. So in addition to this unbelievable flooding, we had hurricane force winds. Now these winds, they're hurricane force. We're talking sustained winds near 75 miles per hour along the coast with gusts exceeding 100, which is absolutely insane. Remember, this is a blizzard, folks, not a hurricane. And with that said, look at this here. And as a result of this huge disaster, nearly all economic activity was stopped. Look at this, 33 hours, just snow for straight 33 hours, and as much as 4 feet in Rhode Island, which really shows that just the power, the raw power that this blizzard had in it. So now that we know kind of a little bit more about this blizzard, let's look at the meteorological history behind it. So February 5th, 1978, a cold front was exiting the U.S. East Coast here, and there was an extratropical system. What that means is just a rainstorm, pretty much. This little guy over here over northern Florida, it's nothing to see really, but then it combined it. All these factors kind of just went into one, and you can see this low pressure system here. They were all on a collision course. Nobody saw it coming, however, and by later on, February 5th, these ingredients were just perfect to make the storm bomb out. Much like the perfect storm of 1991, it kind of just takes advantage of what it has there, and this storm definitely did, no exception here. So let's advance to the next day here, and this is where things get a little interesting. February 6th, and this is creeping up the coast, this monster. Now, due to the lack of technology in the 70s, people didn't have a clue that this monster was on the doorstep. Now, notice the blue H up here. It's high pressure, and in this scenario, it's not good. Usually, high pressure does bring calm weather. Yeah, that's true, but what it also does is repel low pressure systems like this one. It's kind of like having 2 magnets. You know how they repel when they're opposites? That's kind of what's happening here, except on a much larger scale. Now this isn't good in the slightest because now this blizzard has nowhere to go. It can't go up into the Canadian Maritimes because high pressure is blocking it. Remember, it's the two magnets, they repel. So this is just going to sit there and spin just south of Nantucket. And let's make matters worse, why don't we? A new moon. Now this situation has just become deadly because now not only is this storm going to stall out and produce the prolonged snowfall across southern New England here, but it's also going to cause monster coastal flooding. New moons cause higher tides, remember that, because in this case the tides are just going to be amplified significantly by this monster. So now that this setup here on the map, it's a very dangerous situation, but let's take it another day. Let's see what kind of impacts it has. So going on to February 7th here, as you can see, the low pressure system has stalled. It is at a perfect standstill, and it's just spinning. The high pressure over here is not moving. So this blizzard is just going to sit there and spin until the high pressure breaks, which will not be for another 24 hours. So this blizzard, as it just keeps shoving the water up against the coastline, there's plenty of cold air here. So there's no lack of snow all across the region except for Cape Cod, but we'll get into that in just a second. So yeah, this blizzard is just sitting there. It's not going anywhere. 33 hours of constant snowfall across southern New England and just monster tides. As you can see here with the arrows, 4 high tide cycles. And before you know it, the ocean's pretty much at your doorstep if you're along the coastline, which is pretty unbelievable. It's an unbelievable sight. So let's get into just a little closer into Massachusetts now and see what kind of impacts. So the morning of February 7th, 1978, 42 years ago actually, as of this recording. So the height of the storm. Notice along the coastline, it wasn't just the wind along the coast. Notice this. The wind in excess of 60 miles an hour, of course, gusts over hurricane force. But, I mean, on top of that, you had coastal flooding with also the arrows indicating that. But look at this in Situate here, 111 mile an hour gust. I mean, this is insane. This coastal flooding is the worst probably since the Great New England Hurricane back in September 1938. And it's similar to that hurricane because we had simply no warning of it, you know, just a truly surreal situation for all those who were affected by it. So as we can see here, if you go down towards southern Connecticut and Rhode Island, they were dealing with thundersnow, which really indicates an extremely strong storm, a strong core. And you even had on the extreme end of Connecticut here, you had 5-inch-an-hour snowfall, which is absolutely unbelievable. It's pretty much outdoes any storm that's ever come up here in New England. And yeah, so the winds here, I want to talk about that for a second. So we know they were hurricane force and we know they were over 100 miles an hour. Obviously we had the 111 mile per hour gust in Situate, but they were stronger along the coastal communities like Plum Island, Cape Ann, Nahant, Hull, and pretty much down on the south shore across Cape Cod because their peninsulas pretty much, they're surrounded by water, so that wind has no obstacles to stop it. So you're just getting straight wind from the ocean that hasn't been amplified. And as you see here, the 111 mile an hour gust, that's the same as a Category 2 hurricane. So this is a monster blizzard. So now as we work into the interior spots, pretty much elsewhere, heavy snow, 1 to 4 inches an hour. And what's interesting is when you work down on Cape Cod, we were actually dealing with the rain snow line. So you had extreme icing there. And we're talking ice probably half an inch, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you put that on top of things like telephone poles, tree limbs, the weight adds up quickly, and that's why we had so many trees down across Cape Cod. The trees that didn't survive the nighttime ice, the daytime snow did not survive the nighttime ice. And yeah, it was pretty much just an incredible. So overall, just a disaster of epic proportions across this region. From Atlantic City down there to Bangor, Maine, you definitely felt some impact by this storm. So, and finally, after a 33-hour beating across eastern Massachusetts, the high pressure finally breaks, and this storm is able to break free into the Canadian Maritimes. And as you can see here, we are left absolutely paralyzed. I mean, we're talking cars stuck on highways, just stopped dead in their tracks, neighborhoods flooded out by coastal flooding, and just all economic activity just halted for many days. It was an amazing sight. So here's a photo now down Route 128 in Dedham. As you can see here, there's just cars almost buried. They're just, like I said, they're stopped dead in their tracks. I mean, this is a deadly situation because as people left their cars on, to keep warm, the tailpipe became blocked by snow, and so there's nowhere for that carbon dioxide to go, and it ended up backing up into the car and killing the people inside. So it's a really sad and dangerous situation to be in. But I mean, these people didn't even see it coming. I mean, without warning, you're not going to see a monster blizzard like this. So taking a look at another photo here, you can see same route 128, but in a different town, Needham. Still much of the same. Cars almost buried, and it's at least 20 in this picture, but you can see behind me here, it goes on for miles and miles. It's Needham, Dedham, Newton, Waltham, Wakefield, Woburn, Quincy, Milton, they all had scenes like this. Wherever Route 128, whatever towns that went through, you had similar scenes like this. So, I mean, it's just snowfall that quick to trap cars on a highway. It's just insane. That must have actually been really scary to those people if you think about it. And let's go to another picture now. This is one of my favorites because it's our own town. So Swampscott. This is on Humphrey Street. The day after the blizzard, you can see. For those who aren't familiar, this is Humphrey Street. This would be Mission on the Bay right here where Red Rock used to be, and you can see the church in the background there. So interesting here, they had so much snow on the streets on the North Shore that they literally just had to dump it all into the ocean, which haven't seen that in any of my 16 years of being in New England and living. I haven't seen that from any snowstorms. So, and then our one last picture here. Here's the scene in Hull. As you can see, this really shows the power of the coastal flooding. Look at this. It looks like at least 4 feet of water easily from the ocean. I mean, a levee or seawall was likely broken because there's no way that just wave splash over can do this much flooding. And you can see just icebergs, pretty much just what you'd see in the Arctic, in the streets of Hull. And Hull's like a peninsula, just like Nahant too, just to the east of Boston if you don't know where it is. And it was just an incredible situation. You can see the boat here. So obviously the water's deep enough for them to have a boat on the streets. So just an incredible, incredible storm. And that's it for the blizzard of 78. And that's a wrap for this episode of Ferragamo's Forecast this week. So stay tuned for more future episodes. And again, like as always, my contact here. And we do hope to see you next time.